Hello, everyone. We are just about on the hour. We're going to give it one more minute for those that are still joining to get connected, and then we're going to get started. Okay, folks, we're going to get started today with I think maybe this is the 6th or 7th webinar in our Wealthy Retailer series, Obtaining Retail Wealth. This is titled Merchandising 101. We're really going to go back to the basics of what merchandising is for us in our wealthy environment. And so when we talk about retail wealth, my name is Dan Holman. Sorry, I should introduce myself for those that don't know. My name is Dan Holman. I'll talk a little bit more about who we are. Canadian Retail Solutions since 1991 has been providing retail software, inventory planning, and management solutions that empower retailers. We say around the world because we literally have clients that are across the globe. The great bulk of our clients do exist in Canada, so we know Canadian retail probably better than most. At our core, we truly believe in having these real and relevant relationships with our clients and share as a core value amongst our organization this belief that we exist to make retailers better. And so today, this wealthy webinar series is focusing on merchandising. And I'm going to just take 1 second or 1 minute to define what I mean by wealth. Wealth for us has become our core values, our guiding principles, and it really is an acronym. And across the bottom of the screen, you can see what I mean by that. The W really is about winning, creating a win-win-win relationship or environment in your store, meaning a win for you, a win for your customer, and a win for your vendor. Energized, we believe that we need to be super energized in our stores. We talk in our presentations about customer experience being everything, and that customer experience is enhanced when they're in an energized organization. We believe we need to be admired by our peers, by our staff, by our coworkers, and of course by our customers. We believe in being lean in inventory, lean in expense, lean in presentation, lean giving us the ability to be nimble and to change quickly with the changing environment that we're in. Tenacious in that we get up and charge forward towards our vision. We treat setbacks like anomalies and get up and just keep moving forward inch by inch. And of course, happiness. We believe that happiness is an essential ingredient to any retail store's success. You must first become happy before you will ever be successful. And then, of course, I always leave off the why because that really is all about you. You are the very core of your foundation, and you need to embody your guiding principles, your core values, to be able to lead your team. And so with that, we're going to move on to this idea of merchandising. And I am going to speak at somewhat of a primary level when we talk about merchandising. And in future webinars, we'll get deeper and deeper into certain aspects or different aspects. And if you're watching any one of our team's vlogs, video blogs, you'll hear some great tips and advice. Scott Smith just released one that was a little bit more about scarcity and truly believing in the product you're showing and how to effectively merchandise your store. So when I talk about merchandising, I'm really not talking today about the act of displaying your goods, but the act of effectively managing your inventory, merchandising your stores. And so we start by classifying, creating this effective DCS. In the POS world, it's called DCS, or department, category, and subcategory. Others will call it department, class, and subclass. And so we think, in fact, how our customer shops when we say properly classify your inventory. I'll give you an example. Men's shirts, short sleeve. Men's is the department, shirts is the class, short sleeve is the subclass. And now that's a fairly simplistic DCS, but you get the point that I'm really looking at that man walking in my store to buy a short sleeve shirt. And so when it comes back to evaluating my inventory's performance, I'm thinking about it through my customer's eyes, not my eyes, or not the way my vendor thinks about it, my costs think about it, or my point of sale system may classify it. I'm thinking, or pardon me, may quantify it. I am truly thinking about how he or she shops in my store. So by department, class, and subclass. Now, if you have an inventory planner, they're going to be great advocates for creating this effective DCS. If you're not working with an inventory planner, just talk to your point of sale provider to carefully develop that structure to ensure that your system creates at least by department, class, and subclass. It's also important to understand the implications of changing those classifications along the way. It's important to keep classes organized and clean. When I say clean, I mean simplified, that they're not convoluted. There's not a bunch of things grouped in there. Keep them super clean and organized. And so creating that first step in truly effectively merchandising a store is understanding how to classify your inventory. From there, we then have the ability to buy by classification. So we took an old spin on the chive, or keep calm, and buy with confidence. Keep calm, relax, use numbers, remove emotion, buy with objectivity, and buy with confidence. And so we need to get on a plan that allows us to spend dollars based on the customer's demand in our store, which we measure by class. Remember, I said men's short sleeve shirts. I want to know what the demand is in my store for those men's short sleeve shirts. We build budgets by that class and allocate dollars within the class to each vendor as they rank in our store for each season. And so remember that you have vendors that run hot and cold. And so we might allocate deeper to one vendor in spring than we do to them in fall. And so we're allocating dollars to vendors as they're ranked each season, or as I've decided that I'm going to allocate dollars. Remember that it's important when we're classifying our inventory and ranking our vendors, we don't buy the same thing from every vendor. And using classifications will help you to recognize, hey, I don't need to buy this short sleeve t-shirt from 10 different vendors, or this denim. I might have this cut of denim and I might only buy that from 2 vendors or 3 vendors. I don't need to replicate the same product with vendor over vendor over vendor. The other thing, when I say buy by classification, it's important that we see ourselves as a personal buyer. And so we're really looking to fulfill, your customer's predetermined needs rather than your own. And when you think about the classification, you're truly thinking about the customer and not your own needs. The last thing I say about buying with classification and buying by class, buying with confidence, is that you're educated before every buying appointment. So here we are in the heart of buying season, perhaps, and we need to know exactly how we are performing in our stores with each vendor. Create a vendor scorecard that allows us to objectively grade each vendor at the class level. A mentor of mine once told me in buying, just because they do tops really well doesn't mean they do bottoms. And I'll give you an example. I'll pick on a vendor, not that they don't do well or do well, but Saks is somebody, Saks underwear, men's underwear, you're probably familiar with it, are really starting to expand their product assortment. And so we know how well they do in men's underwear. But just because they do that well in men's underwear doesn't mean they should be our swimwear provider as well. We want their swimwear performance to stand on its own merit, not the merit of which Saks men's underwear stands on or men's underwear stands on. So when we look at that vendor that now carries underwear, tees, shorts, longs, swim, let's rank each classification separately and buy where the vendor is the best. Okay, go for the win. So what do I mean when I say go for the win? I mean, going back to this idea of becoming wealthy, that we maintain win-win relationships with our partners, our vendors. We need to create healthy vendor relationships from the beginning. And if we took a poll and we said, what's the number one essential ingredient to healthy relationships, vendor, personal, and otherwise, it will always be communication, open and honest communication. It's important that you schedule regular visits with your vendors. I say store visits. I made it I'm going to say policy, although that's a bit harsh. I made it a practice to not buy from vendors that didn't come into my store. Whether they were the reps, the distributor, or the vendor themselves, the manufacturer, I never did business, and I still, am not about to do business with someone that doesn't have the time to really understand who I am. And so that's important that they're in your store. They see your space. They recognize how you do what you do, and they get to know you as a store, not as an account number. And so maintaining those healthy relationships comes from seeing vendors or their representatives in your store on a regular basis. Now, that regularity may mean once or twice a year for you, or it may mean monthly or quarterly. Each vendor is going to be a little bit different, but you should have regularly scheduled visits. It's also important to establish turn and sales goals with each vendor and then measure it every month. Know what your sales target is with each vendor and what you anticipate or what you plan your inventory turn to be. Lastly, on going for the win, it has to be about celebrating your vendors. They are your partners. And now I'm going to set aside the importance of customers today, or at this moment, for this second, this nanosecond, and I'm going to say to you that without your vendors, your business does not exist. And yes, I'm saying I'm going to put aside that customer, but without those vendors that you've curated, without that product, your business does not exist. They have to be your partners. They need to be celebrated. They need to recognize that you and they together are the essential ingredient to operating your store. Now, let's put our customer hat back on and recognize that customer experience is everything. Okay, so the next thing in Merchandising 101 today, or the next step we'll call it, is creating a rotation strategy. I've said this in almost every single seminar. Scott has said it in almost every seminar we've done. If you need to have a rotation strategy in your store, a strategy that allows you to find hot spots, to move things that become stale or idle, to improve or maintain stores' freshness. We move product around. I can share with you, having been in a store last week that had just gone through a significant transformation. When I say transformation, I mean a spring layout. So they revamped the display in the store and moved things around, and they found product themselves that they had fell in love with when they purchased and forgot it was in the store. Sounds crazy, but it's the reality. we get caught up in the day-to-day and we forget sometimes about how important it is to continue moving product around. Grocers have become masters at this, at the rotation of inventory, the rotation of stock, always moving inventory around. Grocers have these aisles that are, in some cases, in most cases, predetermined. The daily necessities are always the furthest things away. And so those are the things that sell on their own. Everything else gets a highlight, where it's placed on a shelf, how you display things in your store, how you highlight things in your store will have some influence or contribution to how it is sold. And so the other thing, if you're lucky enough to have a window display, it needs to be changed regularly to represent your store's assortment. Be courageous with your window displays. Be creative. Show things that surprise people in your windows. I don't mean crazy provocative things. I just mean show people, the depth of your business in your window displays. You'll remember how people used to line up to wait to see the Macy's windows, when they did the uncover, or Bloomingdale's, when they uncovered the window displays. Well, that's what we want to be able to do, is to give people an insight into our fashion, into our style, into our sense, into the way we buy or curate products. And we do that through, windows. And if you're lucky enough to have one, you need to change them frequently. Okay, so down to the nitty-gritty. Maintain a strategy that places real value on your inventory. Merchandising 101, right back to the very foundation. Maintain a strategy that places real value on inventory. Think in retail dollars. That's what we want customers to spend. I moments ago was on a call with a prospect, and I said to them, you've got to think in retail dollars. That's what customers spend. And he said, no, that's just not how I think. I think in cost. You have to talk to me at cost. And I thought, okay, you have to be prepared to change. If you want to move your business forward, if you want to break through the glass ceiling, if you want to get to that next level, you've got to be prepared to change. You need to change to this way of thinking. Retail dollars are what customers spend. It's how they value our inventory. Ask yourself regularly, what will my customer pay for this? Stop using standard markups. Stop using standard discounting. Don't confuse customers with discounts. When was the last time you saw Colgate or Pepsi on 50% off? Packaged goods don't do that. They've learned. Apparel, sporting, retail, independent retail just has not gotten there yet. But I can tell you this, the easier you make it, the more relative to dollars we make it, the more we'll sell. That's the way customers think. The other tip that I give everyone is gross margin comes from selling goods, not pricing them. Gross margin, our margin dollars come from selling things. Price them to sell. I don't mean give up margin. I don't mean be discount crazy. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying don't use a markup that creates an unrealistic initial markup that you then discount to achieve. Gross margin comes from selling goods. Price goods at what they'll sell for. Sometimes that's higher than your 2.3 or 3 time markup, and sometimes it's lower. But price things for what they're worth in the customer's eyes. And lastly, I think if you've seen any webinars, you know that we say this often. When it comes to Scotch, the older the better and the more we'll pay for it. That's not the case with your inventory. Inventory is truly a perishable item. You need to treat it like it has an expiry date on it. If something doesn't sell in the first 90 days it's on your floor, what makes you think it will sell in the second 90 days? Very important to think that inventory has an expiry date. I can tell you the answer what will make it sell in the second 90, and that's bribery or markdowns. You know, bribing the customer to take old goods. I've said this before. When was the last time a customer walked in your store and said, "Show me something from last season"? They want to see what's new. They want to see what's fresh. And so, kill the virus and prevent disease in your store. Take your markdown medicine. Inventory's perishable. Treat it that way. And understand that markdowns are an essential ingredient to maintaining a healthy inventory. Markdowns, the ability to cleanse through inventory at end of season, end of size, end of style. You're down to one, mark it down and move on. End of season, goods need to be marked down to move out the door. And make your first markdown your absolute best markdown. Understand why we have the need for markdowns and take some preventative measures. Yes, I say buy better and or buy less, but understand why we're taking markdowns. Why does it happen to us? And take some preventative measure. And I said this before, I'll say it again. When you decide on a markdown, please ignore the standard discount and ask yourself, what will the customer pay for this? Pick up that $100 shirt, and if you believe she'll pay $39 for it, write $39 on it, not 60% off. Lastly, cash is king. You need to have open to buy every single month. You need to have dollars to spend in your store every single month. Now, open to buy, really simplistic math. You know, plan to inflow minus my on order equals my open to buy. But the formula to create this is not as easy. You start with your planned sales and planned markdowns. So what do you forecast sales, including markdowns, to be in this next period, whether it is 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, the season, or more? What do I plan to do in sales? I'm going to add my planned end of period inventory, whatever that end of period is. I'm going to take away my opening or my beginning inventory and any on order, and that equals my open to buy. And so what's really critical here is that having open to buy dollars available every month means that you now have the ability or the choice, the opportunity to feed classes in your store that are performing the best, that are demanding inventory. Too often we go into a retailer and they have copious amounts of tops and no sweaters. And sweaters have sold right through, and because we are over positioned in tops, we don't have cash flow to go and spend on bringing more sweaters in. And we set our buys, we've got this almost erroneously, we've got the set it and forget it attitude when it comes to buying or merchandising in our stores. I booked my order, I bought it, it's what came in, and now I need to sell through it. Rather than leaving dollars available so that we can feed aggressively growing categories to allow us to then grow your overall business and to shrink down a category that's not performing. And so us using an open to buy strategy, I used open to buy in quotations, this open to buy strategy, it's going to allow us every month to feed inventory to the classes that are asking for inventory, to catch trends or flyers in your store that are increasing, not decreasing. We always want to be, on that left side of the bell curve as we go up. We want to ride that all the way to the top and then yank inventory away as sales peak. And so then we start to lower that seasonal or transitional inventory so that we get on to the next season. And increasing cash in your business comes from understanding and improving the two most important KPIs in retail: inventory turnover and cash margin return on investment. Cash margin, the dollars that are created beyond my cost of purchase, sales minus what I bought in inventory in any given period, is my cash margin. Sales minus purchases at cost is cash margin. Cash margin are the dollars, or represent the dollars you have available to pay your operating expenses. If you sell $100,000 this month and you bring in $80,000 worth of inventory, you've only got $20,000 to pay your operating expenses. So there's some light bulbs going off. Hands raising, I can see that. Yes, yes. Sales minus what I buy in inventory every month equals the money I have left to operate my store. If we focus on what that cost of purchase is, on what that cash margin needs to be, we can grow cash flow in the business. And so we've not done this in the webinar before. If you have questions, if you want a copy of this, shoot an email off to planning@retailbycrs.com, or you can send, or you can give a call, 800-725-6810, extension 206. And we're saying, hey, we have a special offer for you. It really, truly is a no obligation offer. From this webinar and this webinar alone, if you send an email to planning@retailbycrs.com, we will perform a free inventory analysis. We'll grab a data set from you and say, here's where it looks like you're missing some business. Here are classes of merchandise that you're buying incorrectly. Here are the ones you're buying correctly. Here's how you can generate a little more cash. And if you'd like us to go one step deeper, we can do a financial analysis and say, here's where your expenses are out of line with industry benchmarks or right in line. And even to the point that I can give you, or we, one of the team, can give you what those benchmarks should be on your income statement. Again, I'm going to say, this is a free, no obligation offer. It is simply going to be about an hour or so of work with us in the back end to then spend 30 minutes on a phone call with you. Send an email to planning@retailbycrs.com and we can schedule that free analysis for you. Thank you again for joining our webinar today. Again, for a copy of this, shoot me a quick email to planning@retailbycrs.com or dan@retailbycrs.com, and Scott or I will reach out and send you a copy of this presentation. And so what's next? I think next on our webinar list is going to be a retail case study, so keep your eyes open in your emails and we'll send out notice on that. Thank you for joining us today. Very much appreciated and hope you guys have a fabulous day. Happy retailing.